Hi, I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from yourblackworld.net. And today I was talking to my partner in crime, Yvette Carnell, and we had something that we just wanted to discuss with the public that I thought maybe other people might find interesting. This is about a year ago, but I read something about Tom Joyner and Michael Baisden being taken off the air in New York. Now, since that time, Baisden is completely off the air, from what I understand. I don't know what the next step is for him. It makes me sad because I like Michael Baisden. I respect him. I also respect Tom Joyner, the fly jock, for what he accomplished in the industry. But one of the things I thought would be really interesting is that when Tom was asked about being taken off the air in New York, obviously he was upset about it. And one of the things that he referenced was that right after the civil rights movement, that the FCC required the airwaves to keep shows on the air that were community oriented. And so it seemed as though Tom was sort of saying that, this is something that black people should fight for, that this is something maybe the Obama administration should help with. But at the same time, Tom has been one of those people who has worked very hard to quiet any voices of dissent when it came to the Obama administration. And so it almost seems like a little bit of a contradiction to me, or at least firsthand. And I called Yvette to ask about it. And so I'm going to ask her about it again today. But first I'm going to ask Yvette, how are you doing today, Yvette?
Pretty good. How about you?
I'm doing really well, really well. It's kind of weird getting back on video because I usually do solo videos now, but I said, you and I haven't really gotten on the air in a while, and I thought this was something that we could chop it up about. Now, you told me some things earlier about, your sentiment on the Tom Joyner issue. Can you tell me, what are your thoughts, when you see kind of what's happening to media and you see Tom's reaction to it, what is your perspective?
Well, actually, I think it's kind of funny because I remember very clearly when black people, started to kind of, express their dissatisfaction with President Obama. I think, very well Dr. Carnell West did and Tavis Smiley did, but regardless of those people, there was a sort of angst in the African American community about President Obama and what he was doing for black people and poor people. And when you started to see that, you got a lot of pushback from Tom Joyner. You got a lot of pushback from people like Tom Joyner, people like Steve Harvey, who's saying, who are you to criticize the first black president? What's your problem? Crabs in a barrel, all that sort of imagery. But we're supposed to misuse our political capital. You understand what Tom Joyner is saying, because in that same article, he kind of implied that black people should kind of stand with him in terms of what's happening to him and how he's been cut down. But so you want us to use our black capital to help you, our political capital to help you, one black person. But we're not supposed to help the black people who've been impacted by the domestic cuts, by the freezing of jobs in the federal government when 1 in 4 black people works for the federal government. These aren't things we're supposed to be upset about, but we're supposed to stand with Tom Joyner so he can keep his job. This is the sort of thing that black people in the elite community do. When you see a black person in the elite community losing their job, and the thought is that we're supposed to go to bat for that person because it's bad for that rich black person to lose his job. No, that whether or not Tom Joyner has a job has nothing to do with the plight of black people as a whole. We're not better or no worse because Tom Joyner has a job. So I just feel it's kind of contradictory, to say that we're not supposed to be worried about the domestic cuts and that's just what Obama had to do. But when when there's a cut to your paycheck, Mr. Joyner, we have a problem. I don't see a problem.
So what do you think about the people that might argue, look, Tom Joyner is a voice for the black community. He's on the air every day. He gets information to people that they wouldn't have otherwise. And so maybe him keeping his job or keeping his power is a little more important than the regular rank and file person on the street. I mean, do you think that there's any merit to that kind of argument, Yvette?
No. Listen, tell me what Tom Joyner tells you that you can't get from other media outlets. Understand that if you go to terrestrial radio, whether you go to some blog talk site, whether you go online, whether you go to the Wall Street Journal, whether you go to the Land Journal Constitution, whether you go to the Washington Post, whether you go to independent blogs, you can find information. The information is there. Whether you go to Your Black World, the information is there for you to have. You don't need Tom Joyner for that. You don't need Tom Joyner to know what's going on with the world. He isn't providing you anything, that a substance that really says, hey, without this guy in there, I wouldn't know. You would know if you searched out for it. So I'm not saying that there's not a space for Tom Joyner. There is a space for Tom Joyner, and I want him to be able to compete in that space. But, in a capitalist country, you compete and you win or you lose. And Tom Joyner seemed all too supportive of that kind of setup. When Obama was cutting the federal government, when Obama froze federal pay, he didn't speak out in terms of those people. So when I look at him, I wish him all the best, but I don't think that's something that black people should be fighting for as if that's some sort of black or African American cause. It's not.
Well, I agree with you about the elitism in the black community. One thing that people, I think, don't understand all the time is that black people are very conservative. I told you earlier, I said that if black people were running our own country, we'd probably be like North Korea, where they have to worship their leader like, it's a dictatorship. And I say that because, if you go to North Korea and you see the way people talk about Kim Jong-un and Kim Jong-il, they worship them almost like gods. I mean, you do not question anything they say or that they do. And if you look in the black community for a very long time, when President Obama got elected, you had people that were enamored with him as if he was a hybrid between Martin Luther King and Jesus. I mean, he literally, I remember a lady telling me, about her new picture of Barack that she was going to put next to Martin Luther King and Jesus. And I think that there are some people who feel that you just don't question certain black leaders. You don't question that pastor. You don't question Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson. You don't question President Obama. And it's funny to me because in a way, you see some of the black elite who have benefited tremendously from the rise of Obama. I mean, there are opportunities they get that they never would have had otherwise. They get to go to the White House and all these other things. You've seen these individuals suppress free expression in the black community. They told black folks, look, we don't need you wilding out. We don't need you out here rallying and fighting. You can do that against Republicans, but you can't do that with the guy who actually owes you something for your vote. You have to do that against the people who don't owe you anything, who've ignored you historically, who don't care about you. But you don't rattle the cage. And unfortunately, what's interesting to me is that when you train people to not rattle the cage, well, guess what? When you need them to rattle the cage, they're not going to rattle the cage. If you look at what's going on with radio being taken over by all this, excuse my French, this bullshit entertainment that they have everywhere, and you see the Tom Joyners and the Michael Baisdens going off the air. Well, that's something that the FCC can fix. Well, guess who can influence the FCC? That president that you love so much. He might not be able to get them to change the laws, immediately, but he can do some things. There are things that he and Attorney General Holder can do to help you. You gave them all the votes they needed to get into office. Without your support, they would not be in office. So why is it out of the question to go to those individuals and say, look, we gave you something. Now give us something. You owe us something. You don't owe us your whole presidency, but you owe us a fifth of it because we gave you a fifth of that presidency. And so I think that with Tom, that's the unfortunate reality. I think that at least based on the impression I got from reading this article, I got the impression that Tom was kind of outraged and kind of felt that there were authorities that were beyond his control that were causing him to lose money and lose power and all these other things. And I think his show should be on the air in New York. But the question is, who's going to stand up and fight for that? And there's nobody in a position to fight for that. The Obama administration does not care. They're not going to help you, Tom. Black folks, we've been trained to be passive. The only people who might have the courage to speak up is somebody like an Yvette Carnell. And you already told her, her and Cornell West and other people, you told them to shut up. So where's your revolutionary going to come from? You don't have one anymore. What do you think, Yvette?
No, I agree with you. This is the problem. For too long, black people have seen a world in which, their political agency doesn't come from actual political governmental institutions. Their political agency comes from else. It comes from people on TV. It comes from people on radio. It comes from people in pulpits. And I understand that, but we're full citizens. So what we have to do is say the same thing that those Tea Partiers say. Hey, this is our government and we're taking it back. And you can't put that out there to people by telling people not to protest Obama, by telling people not to hold Obama accountable, by telling people he's our president, so you leave him him alone? Who are you to talk about him? Who gave you that right? You can't do that to people and tell them they have no right to protest their government, then come back around and say, hey, why aren't you standing up for me? Don't you see how the FCC is treating me? I mean, and the fact that he doesn't even see that that is inconsistent is problematic for me. And I have nothing against Tom Joyner per se. I don't think he's a bad human being. I just think he's very inconsistent. And I think he could better serve his community if he really saw the inconsistencies in his own views of politics.
Well, I agree with you. And again, we're not here bashing Tom Joyner. I think his show's good, and I think he and Roland do a really good job. But the fact is that in this country, in this capitalist democracy, you don't get anything without a fight. So black folks who are listening, or white folks, or anybody who's listening, understand that power is not given. Power is taken. And that means sometimes you even have to fight your friends as hard as you fight your enemies. You gotta let them know, look, I might, I respect you and I'll partner with you, but I'm not a punk. I'm not gonna let you walk all over me. I'm not gonna let you control me. I'm not gonna let you tell me what to do. If we can work on a mutually beneficial partnership, then I'm good. But as soon as that partnership gets out of balance, then you gonna hear from me. And I think that's how you maintain that respect, because I think that there are those who can rightfully argue that the Obama administration, they love black folks. They love what we give to them. But the question is, do they really respect us? And there's a big difference, right? A man loves his mistress. Like, ooh, when I go to her house, she cooks for me. She gives me the best time in the bedroom imaginable. But does he really respect her? Because when she steps up and says that she has a need, well, he got better things to do. And he expects her to understand that. Well, I'm not interested in being anybody's mistress. They got to put a ring on it. So Yvette, I want to say thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
No problem.
And thank you all for checking us out at yourblackworld.com. And please keep coming back. And until we meet again, please stay strong, be blessed, and be educated. We are gone. Peace.